So beyond making people more open to our ideas, we might also want them to learn and actually understand the ideas. I know it's crazy, right?
Yeah, right.
But no, I mean, it just means that part of what we're talking about when you pitch is, am I charismatic? Do I have the
Right.
look and feel? But then there's another element of what are they going to remember later?
Right.
Are they going to remember me? Are they going to remember vaguely liking an idea? Are they going to remember the idea?
Right.
Right?
And is my goal to actually get them to understand the idea, change their perspective, and that will be challenging in and of itself. And so we have to help them work through that process as well.
Right. So how can we get the person we're pitching to go through that perspective change process?
Yeah.
We can send a message around the world in 1/7 of a second, but it can take years to drive an idea through a 1/4 inch of human skull. It's a great quote from Charles Kettering, who was the head of GM Research in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. That appreciating a new idea, a creative idea, generated by other people can be really hard. Other people may not understand the idea. They may have no sense of what it is you're talking about. Other people may not see the potential in the idea. They get it, but they don't see why it would matter and where it would take them. Finally, other people may see an idea as failing on the very criteria they tend to use. It just doesn't sound good. It sounds like it won't work. It's not as good as what we already have. And this is why we need to find ways to get other people to understand and appreciate the ideas that we are pitching to them. Well, what does it mean to get someone to understand and appreciate our ideas? By now, the answer I'm going to give you probably won't be surprising. It means we have to encourage other people to change their perspectives. Communicating is not just handing facts from one person to another. We want them to learn to come to see the world differently so that they can recognize the value that we see in an idea for themselves. And that means our task as communicators is to help others learn to change their perspectives. Well, how do we change our perspectives? Well, we've talked about this. So who are we trying to pitch, right? So think about our audience. What are the pages of their perspective? What are the parts, actions, goals, events, self-concept that they might have? Who is our audience? What role will they put themselves in? What event do they think they are in? What goals do they already have? What actions and parts are they already thinking about as being relevant and important and obvious? Now, which of those pages might need to change? What aspects of pages could be different for your audience than they are right now? Right? So how is their perspective going to have to change? Is it a goal change? Is it an event change? A self-concept change? Maybe just a part change? What is it that they're going to have to change their perspectives about in order for them to appreciate the idea that we have? Next, once we have a sense of the kind of change we want them to go through, then we can think about what cues might trigger them to start making that change to their perspectives. We've talked about a variety of cues, but the 3 most relevant in communication are surprise, dissatisfaction, and impasse. Can we say something to someone else that they won't expect and that they didn't see coming? That might surprise them, gather their attention, and therefore make them interested in hearing what we have to say next. Can we point out something that they should be dissatisfied with so that they're willing to undergo the effort to think a little differently and be open to a new possibility? Can we tell them that we're at an impasse, that we're stuck, we've gone as far as we can go, and there's no point continuing? We have to change course and head in a different direction. Which cue can you use to prompt them to want to change their perspective, or at least be open to the possibility? Finally, what tools do we have to make them change their perspective? Can we offer them an analogy? Can we offer them a way to recategorize something? Can we form a novel combination that encourages them to see the world in a different way than they'd seen it previously? So for example, maybe we have a new idea and we want somebody to do something different. So we then can think about what cues can I use, what tools can I offer, so I can guide them to make a change to their own perspective, some aspect of their pages, and as a result, arrive at a new understanding by which the idea makes sense, has value, seems relevant, and seems valuable and important and useful. That might be a little indirect. So there's a wonderful quote from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, the famous author of The Little Prince, who talked about it this way: if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them to tasks and to work, but rather teach them to long for the immensity of the sea. So let's try an example pitch. Here we go, situation, right? Your hotel has gotten complaints about noise. You just upgraded the soundproofing. Your larger goal, though, is to enable guests to feel as if they had done more than travel. They have truly gotten away. What can you say to employees so that this goal will guide their actions?
So you could just tell them, hi everyone, we spent all this money on soundproofing. We want people to appreciate how quiet it is. We want to take great care of people, okay?
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
that work?
I'm gonna remember
Does that.
that.
Work for you?
Yeah, I practically fell asleep. I mean,
right. But those are the pitches we often hear, right?
Yeah, they're incredibly boring. They're incredibly abstract. It's just raw information.
Right, unmemorable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than after focused ethnographic exploration. We developed empathic connections with our core users and curated a collection of innovative. I mean, you're like,
that sounds like a professor giving a seminar. No one's going to remember that. That's terrible.
Right. So no matter how well intentioned and maybe the actions were fabulous, it's just noise as a communication. It's not.
Right.
It's not a story.
Right. So you could tell them alternatively, hi everyone, we want you to take great care of people in our new, quieter hotel. For every guest note of thanks and appreciation for your efforts, we will pay you $20. Often we think people are motivated by incentives, right? And then we try to create simple financial incentives to align behavior. And then we spend lots of time making sure they are genuine about it and are not just gaming the system.
Yeah,
which is tough, right?
I mean, right? I mean, but why not go deeper, right? Can we go into, what are the values that you connect with? What sort of makes you your best self and hits home with you as a human being and fits, what you want to do to produce meaningful work and activity. Yeah. So, I don't know, maybe there's a simple analogy here, right? So let's use analogy as a tool. What would make someone connect with the idea of really taking care of someone and enabling them to really get away? And I think of things like holidays or birthdays, right? So if it's your birthday, like, I don't want you to work on your birthday. I want to take care of you on your birthday. I don't want it to be a problem. So now we have an analogy, right? Our guests are like family who arrive on their birthday, right? And we're the host, and we're going to do everything we can for them.
Right.
So that's a way to meaningfully connect it. A very simple analogy that makes it super concrete how it is we're supposed to treat people in general.
And it puts the situation in a context that people are familiar with. That it means something to them.
Yeah.
And it allows them to empathize with the guest too. I think that's a really great approach.
Yeah. So and then now cue, right? So that's the analogy. So how are we going to set that analogy up? Yeah. And there's surprise, there's dissatisfaction, right? There are a number of cues. Here's one that I got the other day, which is I had one of our guests in today in my office yelling at me. And I was really glad. And I was like, are you kidding me? He said, no. I was really glad. If they don't tell us what's wrong, we can't fix it.
Right.
So I thanked them for coming and telling me what they had to say and what was the issue.
Which is shocking enough for me to want to process the information, right? And so that's a cue that I should pay attention.
Exactly. And then I can tell you the story of what they yelled about and what I learned from it. And now you're ready to listen to me.
Yeah,
right?
It sort of reminds me of these strong culture organizations that have stories like Nordstrom. Those stories about customer service that really make you wake up and take notice.
Right.
They're communicating those cues to their employees in a really effective way.
Indeed, yeah. I'm gift wrapping the chainsaw that we don't sell.
Right.
Right. So that's a really concrete example of above and beyond customer service. So anyway, so the idea is, what are the tools that we can use to set up the idea we want to convey, and then what are the cues that we can leverage to grab people's attention and make them ready to hear an alternative interpretation, and that alternative interpretation then is a perspective they can use moving forward.
So, Michael, thank you for joining us. We're very pleased to have you here. I would love to just start by asking you about your work and what it is that you do in museums, and what role does creativity play in the work that you've done? And you've had so many varied experiences.
So I've spent my whole working career in museums and heritage, from being a curator and then through a manager and then into leadership roles. And creativity is not a word that you used to associate with museums, except of course artists and makers and scientists whose work was represented in collections. But the people who ran museums didn't do creative. They did curating, they did cataloguing, they did cleaning and putting in cases and opening doors and that sort of stuff. But creative was not a word that was associated. But I was just conscious, having watched a lot of visitors go around historic properties and actually having gone around a lot myself, how actually crashingly boring the experience was. I mean, people wander around, they engage at a certain level, they have a pleasant time, they leave, and mostly it just gets forgotten. So it seemed to me that if you can make different interventions which provoke wonder or surprise or curiosity, then people are more predisposed to learn. I've always believed that learning starts with curiosity and wonder. It doesn't start with information being thrown at you. You know?
It just reminded me of an experience I had in a museum, and I think it was in Sicily actually, and they had it was in a castle, and they had two mummies set up playing chess with each other. And we walked in, and my daughter was just, "What is this?" And so I think it's interesting that there can be different ways of presenting information that
your
triggers
daughter's
curiosity.
experience is really interesting because if she says, "What is this?" that's the first brilliant reaction. However, it needs to be followed with some working out, which is, "Oh, I see what this is, and I see what this is making me." You know, you need to go on from the "what is this." So if the intervention is just surprise, is just shock, then it doesn't do the job. So just plonking art that doesn't fit in the space just for the benefit of shock is not for me enough. It has to then lead on to some insights about the space, the people who live there, the stories that inhabit it, that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And then they have to add up to something as you go around. What you want is people to have an insight that they wouldn't have had otherwise if they'd just had a conventional presentation. And at its most profound, it can stick with you forever. It can really do. There have been one or two moments when that intervention can really stick. So when I do teaching around this, I often ask people to think about a piece of information they learnt in a historic site or museum, a fact. And in the main, most people can't remember anything because actually they're thrown information and they don't absorb it. And then if you ask people there to think of one moment that they were really moved at an old place, a historic site, an old house, a castle, most people have got an experience, and it normally is in here, not in there.
Oh, interesting. And in a sense, it's telling a story, right? Rather than presenting objects out of order, it's
the story is the thing.
So generating durable change in how people think means we should think about how to guide somebody else through the creative process of changing their perspective. It's a little bit like education. How can we encourage someone else to reconsider what they think and find some new way of thinking interesting and useful as opposed to irrelevant, incomprehensible, wrong, right? And that's the task.
How do you guide someone through that process?
Yeah, and it's the task of a teacher, but obviously as a pitcher, that's part of our job. Right? Is to teach an idea that you will find memorable, interesting, worthwhile, and capable of being used.
Right, and leading them to that conclusion. Right.
Yeah, and making it so they want to learn.